want to do is, on behalf of People Before Profit and Solidarity, is to extend my deepest sympathies and condolences to the family of Vicky Phelan, and to pay tribute to her. She was an absolutely inspirational and heroic fighter for women's health, as everybody knows, and I'm very conscious that beyond extending the sympathies and condolences to our family who are facing the most immediate and terrible loss, that Vicky was someone who explicitly said she didn't want eulogies, she didn't want tributes. She was someone who wanted action, and I think that really is the thing that we need to emphasise, that she fought for women's health, the most heroic struggle for women's health, and an insistence that the state had to protect women's health after the cervical check scandal. And I hope that will be the real tribute to her, that government and the political system will pay tribute to her by ensuring that her inspirational campaigning for women's health will be truly vindicated by this and by future governments. Just to highlight, I suppose, in addition to that, then another big priority for People Before Profit this week. I've just come from the Raise the Roof launch for the national rally and demonstration that is going to take place for housing on Saturday the 26th of this month, and all of those trade unions, student unions, political parties, housing groups and so on are urging that people who are affected by and angry about the housing crisis, the rental crisis, the homelessness crisis that is absolutely blighting in the most intolerable way our society, should get out on the streets in their many, many thousands on November the 26th in Dublin, to put pressure on this government to do what it's unwilling to do to address the absolutely catastrophic housing crisis. But this week we want to mention a particular additional reason why people should get out on that protest, as well as calling for more social and affordable housing, calling for rent controls, calling for measures to deal with empty and vacant property, calling for the government to stop families and individuals being forced into homelessness. I think with the Supreme Court ruling around the CETA agreement, the Canadian EU trade agreement, we have another reason why it is important to get out on the streets on the 26th, because that ruling tells us that this agreement is unconstitutional, because it essentially will allow international investors in this country or the European Union to bypass the normal legal system and potentially sue governments who take progressive measures around things like housing. And it's fantastic that we've had a positive ruling with Deputy Costello's case, but it is equally clear that the government continue to be committed to this CETA agreement, which puts the rights to make profit of international investors in areas like housing, the vulture funds, the international property speculators who've contributed so much to the dire housing crisis. If this agreement is ratified, it will limit even further the ability of governments to bring in things like rent controls, to, for example, nationalise the holdings of vulture funds and property speculators who have wrecked the housing market and contributed so much to the housing and homelessness crisis that we are facing. So we just want to signal that at the very least the government should concede there will be a referendum on CETA that could have such far-reaching implications about our ability, or the ability of any government, to deal with a housing crisis, to deal with the climate crisis, to bring in legislation that will protect workers' rights. Because and the public may not know fully what all this is about, but in very simple terms, this is an agreement that gives multinational companies the right to sue governments if governments introduce measures that could impinge on those companies' abilities to make profit. It is the worst and most blatant example of putting profit before people. That's what the CETA agreement is about. The Irish government is committed to supporting and ratifying that agreement, and we are saying they shouldn't. That we need to ring the alarm bells about this agreement, and at the very, very least, the government should concede that there will be a referendum so the people of this country have the right to decide, do they want to sign up to an agreement that has such far-reaching implications about the ability of government to protect workers' rights, to do something about the housing crisis, and to protect our environment.
So, I want to say a few words about the Qatar World Cup. I suppose the big news today is about the bid for Euro 2028. But we are 5 days away now from the start of the Qatar World Cup, which is a massive greenwashing, sports washing exercise by the Qatari regime. And I think, given that it is such a massive sports washing exercise, that governments have a responsibility to this week strongly criticise the Qatari regime's human rights record. They need to push back against that sports washing. The record is clear when it comes to migrant workers. 6,500 and more have died in Qatar since the awarding of the tournament in 2010. The conditions of women, the conditions of LGBTQ people. So this afternoon in the Dáil, I will give the Taoiseach the opportunity to reply to a question in relation to that. I hope he takes that opportunity and makes a very, very strong statement about the human rights record of the Qatari regime and push back against the massive sports washing operation that we're going to see over the next few weeks. I'll leave it at that.
Just two things quickly. Firstly, it's just to highlight that this Saturday is a very important public conference of the Not Our Fault apartment duplex defects campaign. We're expecting now over 100 people from many different apartment and duplex complexes to attend as part of a very serious campaign to insist that this is not their fault. That the fact that they are faced with bills of an average of €25,000 each, up to €68,500 for some, is no fault of theirs whatsoever. They did everything right. It's the fault of a Fianna Fáil government which introduced self-certification and the builders which jumped through that hoop of self-certification to build, unsafe buildings which ordinary people are now left to pay the price. So these campaigners, apartment and defect owners and duplex owners are demanding that there is a 100% redress scheme, with the state then pursuing the builders responsible. The second thing I want to raise is about the continuous undermining of what is left of neutrality in this state. From the point of view of the political establishment, it has always been just a restriction on their ability to openly support the interests of the US, of NATO, of Western imperialism. But increasingly it's being dropped, even in terms of rhetoric and definitely in terms of action. Simon Coveney this morning was on News Talk speaking about how Ireland is not neutral. Then in reality, what is happening is Ireland has now participated, I got a PQ back last week, Ireland has participated in 3 meetings at NATO headquarters over the last number of months. That's a very significant step towards integration into the NATO military alliance, and Ireland is due to participate in the EU military training. It's a full spectrum military training exercise of Ukrainian troops in a month or two's time. That is participation in a military conflict without any vote in the Dáil to give military training to one side involved in a war. And the Irish government likes to say, oh, we're not really participating in the military conflict because we're just doing the demining operations. Even that isn't fully clear yet exactly what will be done. That's what's been said in the Dáil, but the details haven't been hammered out. But the reality is what's happening is full spectrum military training by the EU of the Ukrainian army, and we don't think that Ireland should be participating in that because while we're 100% against Putin's invasion of Ukraine, in favour of the right of self-determination of ordinary people in Ukraine as well as minorities within Ukraine, we do not agree with the warmongering by Western imperialism and their own agenda which they're using to drive a process of militarisation, and we don't think that Ireland should be participating in it. Instead, we should do what we've put forward in a motion, which is to call for it to be a champion of the cancellation of Ukrainian debt. We should be shutting down the shadow banking industry which takes place through the IFSC, facilitating Russian oligarchs and others to wash their money, and we should be sending increased amounts of humanitarian aid as well as welcoming refugees. They're the things we should be doing to assist ordinary Ukrainian people as opposed to participating in this European and NATO militarisation.
Just a quick question for Richard. Richard, you're a former pupil of St. Michael's.
Yeah.
And I was just wondering what comment you had regarding the allegations which have been made in relation to the Holy Ghost Fathers and the revelations in relation to Blackrock and the other schools where pupils suffered abuse.
Well, I think it's absolutely appalling what has been revealed, and I think it should be absolutely fully investigated, and no stone should be left unturned in any allegations of schools or teachers or people in these schools, in the Holy Ghost schools, or anywhere else where such allegations are made. We need to listen to those who were abused, who are revealing these terrible instances of abuse, and we need to be guided by them as to where we go next. But I think absolutely no stone should be left unturned, and these and any other possible instances of abuse or other allegations need to be fully and thoroughly investigated, and justice needs to be done for those children who were so foully abused by people in positions of power and authority within the church and within the education system.